Welcome to Analytics Nexus 2019, the premier virtual event for analytics best practice. This presentation is titled Rooting Strategies in Customer Obsession and will be presented by Andrew Watson. This is just one webinar in a whole series of presentations you have access to beginning today. A few quick housekeeping items before I introduce this particular presentation. At any time, you can interact with this presenter or other presenters with questions and or comments on Slack. The Slack address for Analytics Nexus is analyticsnexus.slack.com, and you should have received an email invitation to join if you registered in advance. If you didn't receive that email, you can find an invitation link to the Slack in the menu below, as well as in the resource list. Once you log into Analytics Nexus Slack, you can find the channel for Andrew to engage. Also, you can engage with us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @analytics_nexus. Finally, for questions on Analytics Nexus or Claravine, which is producing this event, feel free to email us at info@claravine.com. This presentation will be presented by Andrew Watson. Andy is the Senior Director of CRM and Marketing Operations at Ancestry, where he oversees global customer lifecycle engagement experiences and the technology strategy to drive customer discovery. He leads a team focused on building digitally integrated relationships and responsible for driving worldwide database revenue programs. In addition, Andy is an adjunct professor at Brigham Young University, where he teaches courses on marketing research methodologies, as well as social media strategies. He also serves on the board of the Utah Valley Chamber of Commerce. Andy, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Happy to be a part of Analytics Nexus this year, and happy to talk a little bit about what we're doing at Ancestry. First of all, a little bit about Ancestry. Our mission is to empower journeys of personal discovery to enrich lives. And as part of that, my team specifically, we kind of plug in a way that essentially is we are fueling the customer curiosity through a guided and consistent experience. And so that's kind of how we really align with Ancestry's mission overall. And as many people know, we essentially have a couple of different product lines. One is our subscription service where people access millions and millions of records to kind of piece together their family tree and who they are, where they come from. We also have DNA kits where people can get to know better what kind of geographies and regions they're coming from and kind of look back at their history from a genetic standpoint as well. So the two of those together is what kind of powers that journey of enriching their life and discovering more about who you are, where you come from, and tapping into that human experience. And so today I'm going to get into really how to be customer obsessed. And so we'll start out with taking a look at the challenge we're facing as we got into this and really how to shift that paradigm and how to use our data to make sure we are focusing on customer first. So traditionally, there are a couple of different ways to look at the customer experience, and one is older than the other one's quite new. But what we're trying to get away from is this channel and funnel view. That is organically set up in a way that kind of forces a siloed effect for the customer. Because the different channels are operating against their own KPIs, and while they are aware of what's going on across the different tactics, because the data is not there, the data isn't connected to provide an identified audience segment based off of behavior, it's just naturally going to be a little bit siloed as you try and escort the customer through the experience. That then causes the journey to be anchored off of stages of financial progression instead of stages of customer moments. And it causes a linear experience for the customer, which really isn't very realistic. So what we're trying to shift the paradigm to here is really something that's insights-based, coordinated based off of audience segments that are grown from a solid data foundation. That then allows us to anchor our customer journey on the needs and moments of the customer, providing more of a next best step philosophy, meaning we will be able to understand based off of behavior and based off of the flags we see from different data attributes, what is the most appropriate next best step for our customer. So let me describe a little bit further about what I mean about the pitfalls of the traditional sales funnel journey. You have your marketing channels focused on acquisition, and while everyone might be aware of the different tactics that others are executing against, and maybe even holding hands in some cases, the data isn't set up in a way that it is integrated to provide and identify behavior across the channel. So what happens is you hit this conversion event, the next stage in the quote-unquote classic sales funnel, and everybody goes into this welcome and onboarding phase with a little bit of blindness looking backward up the funnel in terms of understanding what that customer's experience was coming into your community. And so then as you hit the engagement phase, you're essentially dealing with a few different paths. While you have the customer marketing group, for example, going down this path of education and lifecycle management, making sure that the right offers and upgrades are presented at the right time. Concurrently, you have the product organization trying to keep the customer engaged within the product itself and helping them engage with, family trees in our case. And how do you add different things to your family tree? What's the next best step for you in terms of understanding how your DNA results come in? And then you have member services operating on a separate path. All of it kind of marching toward the same objective, but just not coordinated because in our case, we just didn't have the data infrastructure to tie everything together to allow any of us who are looking at the customer journey and interacting with the customer, face-to-face, so to speak, to understand where they just came from and what the next best step is for them in terms of making their relationship with us very successful. Compounded on top of that, we were dealing with a very complex tech stack in trying to achieve cross-channel personalization. So we had a lot of different pieces going on, but the tech debt was very heavy, and so in trying to tie everything together to make it actionable seemed like a very discouraging kind of experience. So our old segmentation data flow kind of looked like this at a very high level, and I'm sure this probably applies to many organizations out there. We have a bunch of great data that's living across the organization that we just didn't have in real time because of the path and the amount of time it took for us to get into our CRM data extensions. And so, unfortunately, it was up to 48 hours sometimes, depending on when we'd received some of the critical data we needed to provide a better customer experience. So we'd have rich data existing in some of our data silos that would give us information like, when did people register? When did people start a free trial? Did they start a subscription? And when did they start a tree? When did they start receiving hints? And how are those hints received? Did they accept or reject the hints? What kind of searches were happening, and were those searches successful? Did they hit different dead ends in the product or in the experience? And did they hit different paywalls that didn't make sense to them? All these kinds of things, we actually have the data somewhere, but it took so long for it to get to our CRM system that we couldn't really action off of it in a way that would help the customer in real time. So, as you know, a lot can change in 48 hours. Since we're getting data so late, it causes a lot of confusion sometimes in the customer experience. For example, one scenario could be a customer comes in and let's say they decide to engage with and register for our family history subscription product. Well, we know that maybe 12% of all of our registrants also purchased DNA within 24 hours of that. But because we didn't have that kind of insight, we weren't able to identify the segment of customers that fell into that category. And so we knew we had a bunch of customers who were experiencing perhaps a confusing journey in terms of our interactions and communications with them, and maybe even irrelevant. And so that kind of scenario is happening across various touch points in our customer journey. And that's part of the challenge with our former data setup and what we're trying to change as we change that paradigm to be more customer focused. So what did we do? How did we solve this problem? First of all, we ended up combining and simplifying, so to speak, our tech stack so that we just said, look, we're going to focus on just funneling everything into one customer data platform, our CDP. And then we want everything off of one campaign management system. So right now we're using Salesforce. And for our reporting and analytics, we're going to go toward a more of a multi-touch attribution since we're going to be digging into everything anyway. So that was kind of step number one, is cleaning everything up and making it less convoluted for the data to get from A to B. Then, now that we have everything flowing into the CDP, again, this is a very simplified view, we're now able to receive some of those data attributes in minutes as opposed to hours and days later, which opens up a whole new world for what we can do for our customers. So now our customer journey, instead of looking linear, we actually have more of a phased and a moments-based customer journey where regardless of where our customers are in their experience with us, we can kind of predict in some cases and understand what is the best next step for that customer. Are they looking at our family history product, or have they already subscribed to exploring our records and finding those nuggets of knowledge that put together that puzzle for them and where they fit in their life? And how do we then understand where they're at in additional discovery and additional engagement, and how do we get them from one step to the next? The key part of this as well, we talk about the data, but equally important is understanding how to form internal partnerships around those same customer segments. So we've done a lot of work over the past year partnering with our product organization, member services organization, our user experience, and others to make sure that we are all looking at the same behavioral segments. And as we identify interesting learnings across trends, we'll share that across the table and make sure that we coordinate the customer experience so that we are not, for example, sending a text or an email to a customer that may have already been covered, the day before or maybe the hour before by a product experience. Or on the other side of that coin, if that customer didn't receive something they were looking for in the product, if there's a gap in the product experience, perhaps there's something that the communications team or member services team can do to bridge that gap to make sure that experience is holistic. So this is now the way we kind of look at our customer's experience. From a CRM perspective anyway, we have three basic phases, and we have fueling curiosity. Now that we have the information, we can do that with segmented and targeted educational content. And so that helps us understand, okay, we need to first make sure the customers know exactly what these products are, how they work, what they do, and what the value is for them. Once we do that, they move on to this discovery phase to where our goal is to really drive engagement with them. And how do we make sure that they aren't just feeling a part of the Ancestry community, but they're actually seeing value and getting those doses of excitement and emotional highs as they discover new things about their ancestors or their past or who they are, where they come from. And so really getting them engaged in the product to discover more and more. After that, this third phase is really about timely offers. And so we feel like once we get someone engaged with us and they see the value in what they're doing and they feel the excitement, then we have earned the right to present an offer to them. It's a privilege for us to give them something that we think will truly add more value now that they're ready for it, as opposed to just peppering them with upgrades and cross-sells throughout the experience. We want to make sure it's the right time. And so then we've connected KPIs to each of those. And then so I'll kind of go into an example of what some of the wins we've received as we've executed on this strategy. So now our experience is more of a customer view as opposed to that classic sales funnel approach. So we are now able to look at our customers, and while we still have the channels executing on their various tactics and strategies, it's now all about understanding the segments we can identify and create in real time. So we can understand more of a recipe approach as opposed to everyone just kind of shooting in one direction. We can determine what is the right recipe for that person to guide them into the right onboarding experience, which is really just about curiosity. And so to fuel that curiosity, we're now able to understand, okay, is this person ready for a free trial? Are they just wanting to jump right in and get started? Do they need help with their account setup? And what is the right welcome messaging for that person? It's all about adjusting the journey based on that data so that we can provide the flexibility in the customer experience. That then allows us to execute on our next best step philosophy. So there are, myriad ways where people can kind of go through the rest of our engagement journey, because it's all about that repetitive flywheel of discovery. So one person might start out in a way just looking at building the family tree. They might then move on to needing some support. After that, they could need some more education, followed by some upsell offers if we feel like we've earned that right at that point. After that, they might need additional education, followed by some more hints or some record matches. And then after that, they might be ready for, some upsell offers. And then finally, renewal. And that's just one scenario, because we can look at what the right next best step is for each customer. Other scenarios can be very similar, but just follow a different path in terms of what the right next best step is for each customer. It's all depending on what segment behavior is displayed as we look at our data. So let me kind of go into a few early successes as I kind of go into some examples about each one of those three phases. So first, looking at some overall performance that we're receiving in 2018 that kind of is guiding us for 2019. As far as our fueling curiosity, because we now have smarter and deeper segmentation with differentiated educational content by segment, we've seen a pretty big jump in our open rate and click-through rate in terms of our engagement emails. As far as our discovery, because we focused on the education, the engagement now in key product drivers, now that we're able to see what type of content is being viewed, how our searches are performing, what kind of hints are coming in and when people are looking at building trees and what are they doing with their matches, how is that peer-to-peer messaging looking like and what are the trends there, we are now able to see a huge jump in product engagement, which leads to, again, like I mentioned before, the correct time and place to present offers. So we now feel like we're in a better place to earn that right to offer customers additional cross-sell or upgrade opportunities, which now have guided us into bigger financial performance, which makes our business impact more palatable to the business. So we're excited about everything we've seen. So I'll show some quick examples in each of these categories of what we've done. So in terms of fueling curiosity, prior to having this insight into the data, we just kind of blasted everybody with the same types of things that we saw at a very high level that people might be interested in. But now we're able to segment what users, for example, just have ordered our DNA product. What users have engaged with our family tree and they've registered but maybe not subscribed yet. What people that we refer to as winbacks, what people have started disengaging with the product or we haven't seen them engage with any kind of email or log into the product in X many months. What kind of content do they need to re-engage? Again, all about what is the right next step for each customer. And of course, our core group of family history subscribers. What's the right stuff for them? Are they power users? They need different content. They don't want to be served with anything that's too elementary. So now that we've kind of segmented our users out with the data that we have, our open rate has skyrocketed as well as our click-through rate and click-to-open rate. So we're seeing a lot of better engagement in terms of that curiosity phase. Then going into the driving discovery phase, we have an example here where we took a segment of our customers, our DNA kit only customers, and we were noticing they needed to understand better how to connect that value back to why it would be interesting for them to look into our family history and all the records we have accessible there to kind of complete that full view of their personal discovery. And so we can now create different landing pages to meet the needs and again the right next best step for that customer. And for this particular test we ran, we saw a 121% increase in free trial signups from that segment of DNA kit customers, as well as a 65% increase in actual subscriptions. So a lot of great wins there, just using our segments to understand where to point them the best. And then finally, looking at our timely offers, delivering the right offer at the right time. We're now able to run the appropriate tests for the appropriate segments. So we can understand, for example, how do we engage our win-backs, or what are our non-engaged win-backs, or what about our registrants and our non-engaged registrants? So we were able to run a test for one part of our journey. For example, 4 days after someone has received their DNA results, let's see what happens if we send them an offer. And so all kinds of tests we can now run because we have the right view into the right segment in real time. In this case, we saw a ton of lift across the board in all aspects of that campaign, and that leads us to better financial performance, which is what we're super excited for from a business standpoint. But it also shows us that our customers are actually receiving value in what the product is offering, which is exciting for everybody. So, kind of summing this up, I want to talk about a few key principles. First, the end goal of an experience shouldn't be about renewal and upsell. It's really about meeting the next best step for the customer. The financial benefits from what we've seen will follow organically. Secondly, you want to anchor the experience on insights-based moments. So invest in a flexible platform to connect the right data to power and understand the interaction thresholds and behavior. That's an important concept to understand, that threshold of interaction. Some people are different. Some people need more time in different phases of the journey than others. And so to understand and identify the behavior of those segments is critical to ensuring that you provide a good experience for your customers. Third, you never want to force the monetization in the journey. You need to earn the privilege to upsell to your customers after you've proven the value. Fourth, be relentless in establishing internal partnerships across functions. To the customer, you have to remember you're one entity from their standpoint. You're not different. The voice has to be the same as well as the experience. And finally, define the customer journey based on experience chapters rather than funnel stages. That will ensure that everything is aligned. You have the right segments hitting at the right time, and your customers will love you, and you'll see the benefits from a business standpoint. So thanks for dialing into this one. I've enjoyed being a part of Nexus Analytics this year. I'm always happy and excited to talk shop with anyone who's interested. Also happy to line you up with anyone on my team for those who are interested in getting into the nitty-gritty of what exactly we're doing with the data, how we're setting that up, what systems we're using, how we're unraveling and sewing together a better tapestry for our customers. So happy to hear from some of you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Andy, for sharing this material. It's been a great presentation. Just a reminder to our guests, you can engage with Andrew Watson with questions and or comments on his Slack channel at Analytics Nexus. Thanks again, and enjoy the rest of Analytics Nexus 2019.